Hello and welcome to another edition of Proselytize or Apostate. I'm Bruce Russell, your host. I'm here with my co-host, David Paulman. What's up, David? Russell, your host. Here with my co-host, David Paulman. What's up, David?
How's it going, Russell?
All right, and over here on this other side, Caleb Johnston. And I'm here with the Mentionables. So over here to my this direction, the one and only.
I'm Clinton Wilcox.
Right below Mr. Wilcox is
someone whose computer's not working. I'm Pastor Mark Lambert.
And next to Mark is the one and only.
Well, I'm next to Mark. Oh my gosh, give me some disinfectant. I want to practice social distancing right now. Yeah, I'm Nick Peters, and just so everyone knows, since there's a lot of controversy about this, I do affirm the virgin birth.
We had no idea.
Right.
Now we got Dale.
I'm Dale from Real Seeker Ministries, and I'm happy to be a part of the show, and I also affirm the virgin birth.
I'm pleased to hear that you affirm the virgin birth, which I do affirm.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think we all affirm the virgin birth here, except for Paulman.
Yeah, Paulman's the odd man.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he is the odd man out. Yeah,
Must be why he disappeared.
Yeah, he did disappear on us. I don't know what's going on with that guy. So yeah, guys, I pulled this together. I wanted to bring everybody on because, there's a lot of confusion about this time of the year, and it's not just the consumerism. I have friends that have abandoned celebrating Christmas and things like Easter because they say it's pagan. So I wanted to pull everybody together and just examine, is Christmas pagan? Let's look at the narratives. Let's just do all things Christmas. And I think we got an excellent cast here to do that. So I hope this is going to be informative. Welcome, guys. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate it. This is going to be a blast. Again, we're here with the Mentionables and Real Seekers Ministries, along with Proselytize or Apostatize, with my co-host being gone, who is a presuppositionalist. And I can say that because he's not here right now. So he's not here to defend himself. So we can get away with it as much as we want.
Because it's true.
Guys, like one of the things that really hit me here is a long time ago, I was in a very charismatic movement. It was a church that started off Pentecostal and then went to Word of Faith. So at one point, as a young Christian, I gave my pastor a Christmas gift. And it was a picture of Jesus sitting over on the Mount of Olives, looking over Jerusalem and stuff. It was a nice little picture. But he was like, I don't celebrate Christmas. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, it's very pagan. So I was like, what do you mean it's pagan? He's like, well, look at Jeremiah 10:1-5. And this talks about the Christmas tree. And I was like, really? So I read it. And of course, I was like, yeah, that sounds like the Christmas tree, right? Because he only showed me, a little bit of the verse. He didn't show me everything. So, and I didn't understand context back then. I was a brand new Christian. I didn't know how to read a 2,000 to 4,000 year old manuscript. I mean, give me a break, right? So he told me about the holidays being heavily influenced by paganism and stuff like that. And we shouldn't celebrate it and this and that. And I respect the guy. I respect his opinion, but there's just something that didn't settle inside of me. It didn't feel right. So over the years, I kept looking into this and looking into this. I mean, for the first couple of years, I bought his theory, but over time, I looked into this and I found out that, I don't think Christmas is that pagan. What do you guys think?
You'll get no disagreement from me.
Not at all pagan. Here.
Yeah, no.
I've heard these kinds of things so often. I not only go even listen to the pagan copycat claim because it's been there, done that every single time, and I affirm the virgin birth.
Yeah, you can actually set your calendar to when publications like Wall Street Journal and some other ones come out with these Christmas is a pagan holiday kind of myths, and then of course during Easter, did Jesus actually exist? Those kinds of things. But yeah, Christmas is definitely not pagan, especially because the reason we celebrate Christmas is because we're celebrating the birth of Christ, and it's also something that's been celebrated by the church down through history. We have, the church has its own calendar, and the church year begins the first or second Sunday of December. I forget how that's calculated, but we start with the season of Advent, which moves then to the season of Christmas, which, we've all heard the song, The 12 Days of Christmas. It's actually based on the Christian calendar because there are 12 days from the first day of Christmas until the Sunday of Epiphany, which is the Sunday that they celebrate the wise men coming to view the Christ child. So, Christmas itself is based on the calendar of the church. It's not a pagan holiday that we celebrate, even if non-religious people have actually turned it into a commercialized holiday.
Right on. Dale, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'm on board with what everybody else said. I mean, the pagan copycat thesis has sort of been refuted. It's done to death by now, right? I think I was even preparing for the show, I was watching the old Tecton TV videos, and they do a great job refuting that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm on board. I understand that there's some commercialized aspects, but I don't see it as a big deal. We're keeping in mind that we're worshiping Christ, and this is about remembering God's giving Jesus to us as a gift at the time. So that's how I see it.
Right on. Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to add to that was, I couldn't find any primary sources that said that anything like December 25th, wreaths. I mean, every culture uses wreaths for something, and I've also, dived into this myself because I heard a debate not too long ago on it, and the Christian just destroyed the pagan. I don't even think the pagan knew it hit him, but it was an amazing debate, and I learned a lot. I started my own research, and that was like a big thing that came to me was primary sources. Where do these things come from? Where do these ideas come from? And one of the things I've discovered is that this culture that we live in these days is they think every meme is telling the truth, and they just believe it on a whim. It's kind of like, when I was younger and when Nick was younger, and we were one of the first people on the Unbelievable Facebook page. I don't know if he remembers that, but
Oh yeah,
but
I'm still on there.
yeah, so am I. But yeah, like they used to have these like one-liners, people would believe in these one-line quips that would come out, and it's very similar to the meme culture today. But I found that meme culture is very prevalent. And, I remember I was working with a Wiccan, and she showed me this meme, saying silly Christians, you basically stole Christmas, Easter, and then they give you the parallel there. So yeah, what do you guys think? Where these things come from? Where does this idea that Christmas is pagan come from?
Well, some of it actually started back around the time of the Reformation, I understand, with an attempt to go after Catholics with some of their traditions, which really backfired. And then around the 19th century, a lot of this was pretty popular, kind of as a way to show, well, Christianity isn't really that unique. It isn't really that different and special. And that's where a lot of this, I think, comes from. And before I had the problems with Steele, I did hear Clinton saying something about how, you can predict the New York Times coming out with all these articles, Jesus didn't exist, Easter is pagan, Christmas is pagan. Y'all remember a while back when they had that article about Ramadan being pagan?
No, I don't even know.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, isn't it kind of funny that an atheist will say that they won't believe anything unless there's evidence for it, but then they'll believe any wild, fanciful claim about Christianity that someone can come up with, no matter how far fetched it is.
Yeah. Caleb, what do you got to say on this?
Yeah, it doesn't take much these days with mass media the way it is for these ideas to get spread around and kind of hold sway over people. Kind of same thing you see with, all these ancient alien theories, put out by the History Channel. It's very much the same way. I mean, we talk on the show a lot about meme culture. We've been playing a meme game recently, just to look at some of these ideas. But what we're seeing with Christmas is the same kind of way. Nobody goes back and spends time resourcing this or researching this, and even some of the news sources, that put out these stories, they don't spend enough time to research it to actually go back to the primary sources, like you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Dale, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I think I agree with exactly what Caleb was saying. It boils down to a lot of intellectual laziness on the part of mythers and that sort of thing. And they don't want to take the effort to look into where these things originate from, or where these claims are coming from, that sort of thing. They just go with the flow. Oh, it's a nice superficial parallel, so let's just say, yeah, the Christians copied it, and not look into it or anything like that.
Yeah, and before we get too into each specific here, because I do want to go through specifics, I want to come around to the apologetic side of this. Nick, he is constantly affirming the virgin birth, and which we all do affirm in this place here. I think that we need to talk about the narrative a little bit. I just heard Lydia McGrew versus Jason Thorne last week on Unbelievable have a debate on the narrative of the Christmas story, and for me, it all came down. I never really dived into it as much. I didn't look too heavily in the census and all those ideas. But my apologetic was always the reliability of the Gospels. So that's kind of the approach I took. What kind of approaches do you guys take to justify the Christmas narrative?
Well, first off, like you said, I do affirm the virgin birth, and I start with classical theism, establish that, then establish the resurrection. From there, you go to the reliability of the Gospels, and everything just seems to flow from there.
For me, as a pastor, as I try to approach apologetics more of the point of people who already believe, who are undergoing criticisms or attacks or maybe even doubts. And so address things from the point of, okay, you already believe this, don't let these challenges shake you. And that's the way I approach it. So rather than trying to prove them, it's more of the defensive, showing that these challenges don't hold any weight.
Yeah, I actually take a similar approach to Nick's, in that I do believe we can establish the historical reliability of the Gospels, but I think you have to establish God's existence, and I would establish that through classical theism. I think you should establish that before you try to argue the historical reliability of the Gospels, because until you can establish the possibility that miracles can happen, the atheist is always going to try to find some kind of alternative explanation. That even if you prove to them the historical reliability of the Gospels, because after all, even non-believing historians accept their historical reliability, they just think that there are alternative explanations to the empty tomb than that a man rose from the dead. So I think until you establish the foundation that either that a God exists or that it's possible that God exists, then I think it's probably not the best tactic to go for the historical reliability first. You first have to establish that miracles are at least possible before they'll even accept that the resurrection is possible.
Right on. Paulman, you're not getting out of this, man. We've already called you a presuppositionalist and a Calvinist and a James White supporter. So you gotta speak here, my friend.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be on here if I was all those things, because I wouldn't be able to, be quiet and just listen to all that. I'd have to say something. So,
So what is your approach, David?
I think it's a good approach if you can establish that God exists first, because you have that in your kind of background knowledge so that you can bring that to the table when you build your resurrection case if you've already established that it's possible. I don't think that's strictly speaking necessary. I think the evidence for the reliability of the Gospels and the evidence for the resurrection is strong enough on its own to get you both the truth of Christianity and so of necessity the existence of God. You would just infer that as a necessary explanation for the resurrection. But yeah, I mean, it's better, it's easier if you can establish God's existence first. I would say I simply don't see that that is necessary.
Right on. Dale?
Yeah, I think I agree with the last ones where like you do need to establish, God exists and the plausibility of miraculous actions and that sort of thing. Obviously, you can take people where they're at. So some people may already accept that. Great, you can go into the historical reliability angle. One thing that I guess I would add just quickly is it's possible that there are skeptics who will accept the possibility that God exists and the possibility of miracles and that sort of thing. They may even grant you that Christianity is true, but they'll say the virgin birth is not true and that sort of thing. And you've had people on the SNS boards that are like that and that. So I think with those type of people, I would try to establish that the Bible as a whole is sufficiently attached to the truth of Christianity. And that means that you have to take doctrines like the virgin birth and that sort of thing along with it.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I agree. So I mean, let's get into specifics. I mean, why do you affirm the virgin birth, Nick?
Well, the virgin birth, which I do affirm, again, I have strong reasons to hold God exists, namely the Thomistic arguments, and then based on the whole kind of minimal facts and possible faith, the N.T. Wright kind of also look at the resurrection of Jesus. I find that to be extremely true. And then the Gospels, on the whole, appear very reliable to me. And so from that point on, I just look and say, well, the virgin birth, it also fits in perfectly with Christian theology. That point explains who Jesus is. It explains how he's God and man both. So at that point, it's said I can definitely say then that I affirm the virgin birth, which I do affirm.
Right on, guys. Okay, so what do you guys got to say to the argument that this is just a parallel to the Caesar Augustus, that he has to be more popular? Jesus has to be better than Caesar Augustus, because there's a comet, and then he was miraculously born, and then you got John the Baptist too, who was also miraculously had a miracle in his birth narrative as well. Do you guys give any credence to that? And if not, why?
I'm not sure I really
the way that
understand
Jesus
the
got
question.
crucified was totally popular with the audience at the time.
What's that?
The way Jesus got crucified was totally popular with the audience at the time. I mean, that's how you win friends and influence people. You go out and present your people as crucified. That does it every time.
Yeah. And the great Caesar, he was stabbed to death, right? That was Julius,
yeah,
right?
he was stabbed to death, but crucifixion was shameful.
Yes, it was. It was. Absolutely. Anybody else on this one?
Well, I'm not sure I quite understand what the objection here is.
Okay, so what are the things leveled against the whole birth narrative is that the authors of the Gospels are actually trying to make Jesus's birth better than other legendary births of famous people such as Caesar Augustus and so on.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess I'm not sure what they mean by better. Like, is the objection that they're actually trying to paint Christ as the Messiah, or I'm just not quite sure what
they're trying to. Yeah, they're trying to paint him in a better, a more divine light than these other characters. they're trying to give him a better than scenario than the other ones because they want to show his superiority over these pagan guys or even people like John the Baptist.
Okay, well, I'll just give a quick response here, and then I can let David take over here. I would just say that, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what they were doing. I can accept that because we know, for example, Luke in his preamble to his letter said that he was going around doing interviews so that he can educate people about who Christ was, and he wanted to do everything by the book historically, make sure he had everything historically correct. And of course, we know that Luke and Matthew both gave genealogies of Jesus because they were trying to show that Jesus had had certain claims that would allow him to be seen as the Messiah. One of them, I want to say I think it was Matthew, was Matthew, because he was writing to Jewish readers, was telling his readers that Jesus came through the line of David, and so he had the claim to the being the king of the Jews, and so on. So yeah, they were actually trying to show that Christ was the Messiah and show his miraculous life. But we also have to understand that Jesus himself, while he did fulfill a number of prophecies while he was here on earth, there were also things that Jesus did fulfilling prophecy that he had no control over, such as being from Nazareth and being born in Bethlehem. So there were things that were set in motion even before Christ was born or even conceived that would show that Christ was actually the Messiah. And so, yeah, I mean, the whole point of the Gospels was to show that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, and what that what that means for those of us who have accepted the claims of Christ and follow him as our teacher.
One thing that occurs to me whenever someone brings this kind of challenge, oh, well, the gospel authors were just, and then fill in the blank with some motivation that this person is asserting that the gospel authors had. Why should I believe whatever they're trying to claim? I mean, why do I now have to disprove someone else's baseless assertion? Someone comes and just says, oh, well, the gospel authors were just trying to make Jesus look better. I have absolutely no reason to think that. Give me some, and then I can respond to it. Otherwise, as the late, great Christopher Hitchens said, anything that is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Yeah, that raises a question, though. Why should that be a claim that we have to deny? I mean, yeah, it would paint the gospel writers as biased, but as we know, you can be biased but also reliable. Some of the most reliable texts we have about the Holocaust were written by Jewish authors. So, I just don't really see any reason why we should have to deny that claim. I think we can, I think it's a claim that we can affirm.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say as well, is that anyone can come up with a theory. I can come up with theories, but it's not a question of who's got just a different theory. You actually have to supply evidence for that theory or show that the available evidence supports your theory better. And so until we have a reason to do that, then it seems that the way we would read it is a simpler hypothesis.
Right on. Dale?
Yeah, I agree. I think just because someone can assert a possible theory or something like that doesn't mean that it's actually probable. And I watched the show with Lydia as well that you were talking about an unbelievable there, and that's what Jason kept saying is, well, you're just supplying this thing. Well, it's possible, and then therefore it's probable and that sort of thing. But on the other hand, you have to be careful. You can't just say, well, because my skeptical theory is possible, therefore the virgin birth is improbable or something like that. So yeah, it's give and take on both sides. You got to look at the actual evidence.
Caleb?
Yeah. With that, I really agree with what Clinton said. I mean, you take a writer like Luke. Let's look at what we know about, the writer of this book. Not only what they say, but the details that are historically credible that we're given in Luke and in Acts, and we look and we find details that are unlike any other historical text in terms of just he's reporting names and places with such reliability. He's right up there with the greatest historians that we see from this time frame. So, do we have reason to doubt? Can we doubt it because it's a miraculous claim? Sure, we can doubt it, but we've also got to consider it as a possibility given all the reliable details, particularly that Luke gave.
Yeah, and
that's
that's
just looking
what I
at
want
one
to
of the
question
Gospels.
next. And I'm going to go to Dale first because he heard this debate too, and I thought it was an interesting point. I'd love to get y'all's feedback on it as well. So Luke reports that after the temple, they go into they do their purification, and then they go straight to Nazareth, while Matthew tells us that they go to Egypt for 2 years. So is there a contradiction there? What's going on? Dale?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure, actually. I know the answer. So I think, was that the one where Lydia herself just said, yeah, there could be an error there?
Yeah, that's the one that she said that she could give discrepancy on that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's so that was, when I was listening to that, that wasn't something that I had thought a lot about myself, but I don't necessarily think it's a contradiction. You can't just assert that. I think you would need to prove that there is a contradiction there. It could be, and it can't be harmonized in some way. So yeah, I'd actually be interested to hear what the others have to say on that, because it's not something that I have a ready answer for.
I actually addressed this. We went through alleged contradictions with my church last couple weeks. If you look, Matthew, is the more Jewish gospel, and so he has Jesus going to Egypt and the coming out of Egypt and all of that. It would really resonate with a Jewish audience, and that's who he's writing to. Whereas Luke is not a Jew, and he's writing a more generalized gospel. Isn't going to speak. So this kind of almost gets to an argument from silence. Just because Luke doesn't mention that they went to Egypt doesn't mean that they didn't go to Egypt. It's just not something he included, because that's not an issue that's going to be catching with his audience. Whereas Matthew, writing to a Jewish audience, that's an aspect of Jesus' life that's really going to resonate with them.
Yeah, historical apologetics isn't really my specialty. I'm somewhat familiar with Lydia's work on this. Actually, I've met her. I did a breakout session at a conference she was also doing a breakout session at, so I've met her, got to interact with her a bit. So I know that we do have disagreements, that she's not a strict inerrantist, and I am a strict inerrantist. So I know that there are some disagreements Lydia and I would have on this, and I totally respect her intellect. She actually attended her breakout session, and she just kind of blew me away with just how smart she is and how knowledgeable on the fundamentals of logic and everything. So I don't disagree with someone of Lydia's intellect lightly, but I do hold to inerrancy. And so for me, whenever there's a discrepancy in there, I think my personal view is that while there are some that we might see as apparent contradictions, that doesn't mean that they're actual contradictions. In fact, I teach a logic class myself, and one of the lessons we actually talk on are the differences between apparent and actual contradictions. And so just because something appears a contradiction on the surface doesn't mean it actually is a contradiction. And so I think that every apparent contradiction we see in the Gospels can be harmonized. For example, if one Gospel writer doesn't mention it, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, because we could, taking all four of the Gospels together, we can create a more cohesive picture of the life and ministry of Christ than just taking one Gospel by itself. So on that note, we do have to be careful about the wording of it. For example, there's the contradiction, or the apparent contradiction, of how many angels were there at the tomb. One Gospel writer says there were two. One Gospel writer only mentions one. But if we look at the language of both passages, the Gospel writer who only mentioned the one angel didn't say that there was only one angel. He was just speaking of the one angel specifically, the one that was actually sort of the spokesperson of the angels who were there. When we do have a Gospel writer that said there were two angels present at the empty tomb. So you have to really pay special attention to the wording of the passages, and just to kind of reiterate, I think that every apparent contradiction can be harmonized.
So basically, they commit the same fallacy as the Calvinists. When Jesus said he died for his sheep, they take it to mean he only died for his sheep. So when the atheist sees that there was an angel,
right,
it means there was only that.
So you have to pay close attention to what the wording actually says. Now, of course, there's also the added wrinkle in that the Gospels were originally written in Greek, not in English. So we're kind of also relying on the translators to have translated the passages, in the spirit of how they were intended also. But yeah, unless there's a pressing reason to go back to the Greek and use the Greek to illuminate what it says in the English, I think we can trust that the translators translated the passages well enough. And so we just have to pay special attention and not, as a Bible professor would say, we can't read into the passage what isn't there. We need to draw out the intended meaning of what the passage actually says.
I have to say it quick. I'm very surprised at what David Paulman just said about Calvinism. He's able to make such a self-deprecating statement like that in a broadcast. That's very good on his part.
So the good admission, David, you're getting somewhere.
That's right.
I've never been known to criticize Calvinism before, so this is new territory for me, Nick.
I was hoping you'd wear your Donald Trump
And
mask on.
is the first step towards recovery.
Right on. And there's also Caleb. Do you have any thoughts on this? I didn't hear from you yet. So,
in general, over Christmas issues, I'm largely dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses on these kind of things. So this isn't one that comes up a lot. But if it came up in discussion with a skeptic, my question's going to be, so what? We throw out both accounts because there's a difference here? No. Let's look at them both. Let's look at them independently. Let's set it aside as if it is an error. But does that mean we write off everything else that's written here? And I don't think we can. It's just not a reasonable thing to do. So, I would just ask, so what?
I mean, does this bring into the whole idea of sources as well? I mean, Matthew's obviously reporting from what he's gathered, and Luke's actually reporting from what he's gathered. And, maybe Luke didn't have access to the information that Jesus went down to Egypt for 2 years. I don't even think Luke may have not even been familiar with the same prophecy that Matthew was referring to. There is one more thing when it comes to the narratives that I did want to discuss, and I don't want to be the only one directing questions, but you guys are more than welcome to direct questions as well. So
I did try to get a little bit of a discussion started with Mark there when I asked him that question earlier, but he didn't take the bait.
You didn't take the bait. Right on. The only other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I can't even remember it now because I just had a brain fart. So
That's what that smell was.
Yes, it was. Actually, it was David's presuppositionless fart that confused me.
Yes, I believe in the academic literature. Yeah, I believe in the academic literature they refer to it as cranial flatulence.
Hey, did that book I recommended to you help you out any? One about working with people that you want to throat jab over and over?
Oh yeah, it helped me, especially when we were examining a matter of faith. Oh yeah, that was fun. But so I mean, I think the narratives can be summed up as being reliable. I think that as for myself, I think that it, like I said, if the rest of the gospel is reliable, if the stories can be trusted, then I think we got a good case there. Does anybody else want to speak to anything else on the narratives?
If we look at the account of Hannibal going to attack Rome, especially when you get crossing the Alps, we have two accounts that are totally contradictory entirely. No one doubts that Hannibal did this. At least no one I know of doubts that he did this. We just don't know how. So one of the mistakes so many skeptics make is that, they point to and say the accounts of how did Judas die? And say, well, if we can't know that, how can we trust anything in the Gospels? Try applying that to anywhere else in ancient history and see how well you do.
Anyone else?
I guess I'll
And I affirm the
ask.
virgin birth.
Yeah, I guess I'll just ask a question because I'll be interested to hear from these guys. But one of the thing about this Egypt thing, so in terms of the sources, so I've heard, some people say for Luke, the source was Mary and Jesus' family and that sort of thing. And for Matthew, it could have been descendants of the wise men or something like that. I'm just sort of wondering if Jesus' family was the source or a source for Luke and the virgin birth and that sort of thing, the narrative, wouldn't we expect some mention of going down to Egypt? Like, why wouldn't that come up or that sort of thing in Luke?
Why does it need to?
I think, I think that's also the argument from silence that they're talking about there. There's a lot of things that people don't mention, when they're given a narrative or given a story. There's a lot of stuff that they just don't consider.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's my take.
Yeah.
Well, and that whole thing about not mentioning something. I'm trying to remember the example. Who was the historian that was writing about the Mount Vesuvius and completely left out a town that got destroyed, despite the fact that they even personally had relatives in that town,
Pliny.
but they didn't mention it in their writings.
It was an off-the-cuff remark.
Or am I getting that wrong?
It was an off-the-cuff remark in a discussion between Pliny the Younger and Tacitus. It wasn't even writing a history of them. That's how we know about it. It isn't until Cassius Dio writes about Herculaneum being destroyed that we find a specific historical reference to that. So all you've got here is an argument from silence, and arguments from silence are notoriously weak. One thing we have to remember is, in the ancient world, so many people say, well, geez, if a gospel message was so important, why didn't anyone write it down? And to us, that makes sense because every one of us, except for perhaps David Parman, can read. In the ancient world, that wasn't so. In the ancient world, oral tradition was the best way to get a message out. It was free. It was reliable. So I can remember a whole lot more information. We can still do this today. I mean, if I go and tell you all a good joke that you really like, odds are you might not remember what I said word for word, but you remember it enough to go out and tell someone else about it. So in the ancient world, then you have two choices on how you can get your message out. You can use oral tradition, which is instant, free, and reliable, and can reach everyone who can hear it, or you can write it down, which is expensive, timely, and can only reach people who can read or those who have access to people who can read and they can hear it from. Which one are you going to choose?
I hear you.
Well, and like I mentioned before, and as we all know, the different authors have their audience in mind. They have their points that they're trying to get across, and it could just be that for whatever reason, it wasn't something that Luke felt needed to be included. It makes perfect sense.
So, perfect. Thank
Yeah. And David, I just want to say I'm really glad you're here because it's taking the heat off of me having Nick on the program here. It gives him another target to focus on.
Right on.
I just wanted to say, Nick, what did I ever do to you, man?
I was going to say, you guys,
Oh, nothing. Just somehow you present yourself to me as a target, and I quite enjoy it. And I affirm the virgin birth.
Well, I think it's actually a rite of passage in apologetics to get the heat from Nick. So,
congratulations.
Yeah.
Right on. So, okay, so I mean, if you guys got anything else on the birth narrative, that would be great. I mean, feel free.
Well, if I haven't said it, I do affirm the virgin birth.
Yeah, I wonder if Nick affirms the virgin birth. Do you mean like if you want to present some more possible objections to it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Evidence, objections, anything that can equip our audiences.
Sure. One that I occasionally hear is in the Old Testament. Of course, we have the prophecy of the virgin birth, which I believe is from Isaiah. And one of the objections left. yeah, one of the objections I sometimes hear from atheists is that Jesus didn't fulfill a prophecy here because the word virgin in the Old Testament actually means young woman or maiden, and so the supposed Old Testament prophecy then is saying that that this Messiah would be born of a young woman or a maiden, and so it's not a virgin birth, and so therefore it wasn't miraculous.
Well, the Hebrew word used in Isaiah 7 is Alma, which there was a specific word that could refer to a virgin. I think that's Betula there in this case. But Alma works just fine because at the time Isaiah is talking about a young woman who's present with them and saying, you know, this woman, see, the situation was King Ahaz was being asked to join a coalition of nations to defend themselves against Assyria. And God's saying, don't do it. And he says, here's how you can, here's my sign to you about this. That virgin there, that woman, she is going to have a child. And before that child is, oh, no, right, wrong, this whole thing is going to be falling apart. And that was a prophecy. That was quite likely Isaiah's wife, or future wife, and who did get pregnant and had the child Mahashala Hashbaz. And that was a sign to King Ahaz that you don't need to go along with this. And I remember virgin birth.
Right. You know, a lot of people
Well,
like to give.
another thing, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, a lot of people like to give their kids biblical names, and I figure my firstborn son, I'm going to name Maher Shalal Hashbaz.
Yeah, well, one thing I was going to
also,
mention.
Wrong name.
When Matthew does quote this passage, though, he uses the word prophenos, which definitely refers to a virgin, and I from a virgin birth.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention is that, you know, the gospel authors oftentimes, I mean, over and over, it seems like they're quoting from the Septuagint. And whenever the Septuagint, the word it uses for the Isaiah passage is definitely for virgin, not just the young lady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a point that I always like to bring up too is that, you know, this is supposed to be a sign of the Messiah. How is just being born of a young maiden supposed to be a miraculous sign?
Right. Right. And, you know, and one of the objections I hear, guys, a lot is that Matthew's just making these prophecies fit Jesus, and that these prophecies aren't actually have anything to do with Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a it could be a valid point for some of them, but this is actually a point that I mentioned earlier, which I think speaks to this too, is that there were a number of prophecies Jesus fulfilled that he couldn't have set up the fulfillment of, such as being born in Bethlehem or being from Nazareth. You know, his parents certainly didn't have messiahship on their mind. They were actually warned by an angel not to return. You know, not. If I'm recalling this correctly, they were warned by an angel not to. Not to go to Egypt until they wound up going to Nazareth? I think, or something like that. But yeah, at any rate, there were certain prophecies Jesus did fulfill that he had no control over, such as, you know, where he was born and certain things. And, you know, there are certain things that happened in Jesus' life which he couldn't have, if he wasn't divine, he couldn't have been able to foresee and put into motion.
Yeah, guys, there's also one more question that you know, I heard last night that I'd like to pose you and get your opinion on with Luke's narrative, is that, you know, if Herod did kill the babies after they found Jesus, how is he welcomed in the temple the next day, you know, or in Jerusalem the next day? Which I thought was a very good question.
Who says it was the next day?
Exactly, and that's what I was thinking. But I'm gonna let you guys respond.
Where the account has it that Herod orders the death of all the children 2 years old and younger, which tells us that that's probably the time frame when the wise men showed up. So there's nothing that says it was the next day. All Jesus had to do was be at the temple on the 8th day for a circumcision. Nothing like that. And judging by the time it could have taken that long to get there. I mean, we don't have the specific details on the time, but I think you're reading too much into Matthew to say that this happened the next day. And I from a virgin birth.
I would agree. Yeah. Dale, you got anything on that?
Yeah, no, I actually agree. That was going to be my answer to that one as well. Yeah, I know some skeptics try to say like that. Why isn't that mentioned in Josephus? That's sort of a common with the slaughtering of the innocents. That's a common objection that you get. So obviously the answer to that is look, there weren't a lot of kids. There's probably like 24 at most in a small village like Bethlehem. So that's one where we wouldn't have an expectation for such a mention. So yeah.
Right on. So, if you guys are good, I'm going to move on to the actual issues as far as the date, the Christmas tree, Santa Claus, and so on. So, the first one, let's cover the day. Let's cover the day, December 25th. Is it okay to celebrate Christmas on December 25th? Or are we just a bunch of winter solstice Yule following people?
Well, there's actually no pagan holiday I know of that takes place on December 25th. On winter solstice, yes, but that doesn't include December 25th. And I think it's the Christian historian Hegesippus in the 2nd century who says Jesus was born on December 25th. And there's an interesting idea that a lot of Jews, or some Jews might have had at the time, that the day that a prophet entered the world would be the same as the day that he left the world. And so if you go to March and you have Jesus crucified there, you go forward 9 months, you get to December. And it's not a stretch to think it was the 25th. And I remember reading Ken Bailey's book on the Good Shepherd, how he says, he's not even talking about Christmas, but he says from, I think, late November to early February, it's the best time to graze sheep in the Middle East. It's the best time there. And I have from the virgin birth.
Yeah. Anybody else on the David Paulman? You've been quiet. Hold on. Let's get David Paulman in here.
Which is good, really, but
We want me to argue with Nick because that's what I'm feeling like doing. So.
Oh,
hey, bring it on.
All right. He's ready.
Right on.
No, I mean, yeah.
Not quite ready yet. We have to have everyone place bets first. Then I'll be ready.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, if they're smart, they'll bet on me. So that way you get all their money.
Yes, I'll bet 2 strips of gold pressed latinum on David.
Nice. I'll take what I can get. All right. As far as this issue goes, and it's not one that I've given a whole lot of study to, but as Nick said, I mean, I haven't seen any evidence that we have any pagan holidays on December the 25th, and even if we did, it doesn't seem like the consequences are that detrimental to me. I mean, the Bible never affirms that Jesus was born on December 25th itself. So if this does have some connection to paganism, then we just say it was a day that they chose later on because of that. And, I don't think any of us are worshiping pagan gods when we are worshiping Christ, even on December 25th. So it seems like almost a non sequitur, even if it's true.
All right.
And I couldn't find my notes where I actually had citations from where I got all this stuff. But last year I dug into it because the question came up. There's actually evidence that they dated the birth of Jesus from the birth of John the Baptist, because we know that John the Baptist's dad was serving in the temple right before he was conceived, and we know what order of priests he was part of. From Josephus, we know what order of the temple was serving when the temple was destroyed. You do the math to figure out when he was serving, and that's when John the Baptist was conceived, right? Mary comes to visit Elizabeth when Elizabeth is 6 months pregnant. You do all that math, and you end up with late December. And then I forget why they kind of nailed down on the 25th, but
Yeah. You know, what's funny, Mark, is that, you know, my parents live in Puerto Rico and they still celebrate John the Baptist's birthday in June. So that's one thing that has been a tradition, at least among Hispanics down in where my stepfather's from. I came to the conclusion that I found, like Nick, no pagan festival or holiday occurring on the same day. Matter of fact, what I did find was Christians having a long-held tradition of the 25th, which is wild because we can actually trace this stuff. Christians can trace that stuff. Pagans can't. And this is what I found in my research that was so compelling, was that they're all over the place. We can actually trace back Hippolytus of Rome in his commentary on Daniel back in 204 AD, which he says, for the first advent of our Lord in the flesh, when he was born in Bethlehem 8 days before Calends of January. I think I said that right. Calends, yeah. December 25th, the fourth day of the week, Wednesday, while Augustus was in his 42nd year, 2 or 3 BC. But from Adam, 5,500 years, and so forth. But he basically gives that idea. In 220, we've got Sextus Julius Africanus, who uses the custom that Nick was referring to, that a prophet would die on the date they were conceived. Jesus was crucified on March 25th, supposedly. So 9 months later, you get December 25th. Some other ones are John Chrysostom's 4th century, who argues December 25th in his homily on the day of Christmas. The Philocalian, man, I can't even say this one. Philocalian calendar lists the 25th as a actually established holiday. So where the ideas of paganism come from, you know, we get these ideas like Saturnilla, for example. Well, Saturnilla was probably the most popular one of Rome at the time. And when I was doing my research, I found that they celebrated anywhere from December 17th to December 20th. And every once in a while, they'd extend it to the 23rd. And it usually never went over 3 days. So any idea that this idea of them having some sort of trying to like steal a pagan holiday, I don't think it'd be really wise to do it after Saturnilla. I mean, these guys would be hungover and drunk. I mean, it's not gonna to process too well for them. So, anybody else on that?
Actually, I did have a quick question.
Sure.
Because I've never heard this idea that a prophet dies on the day he was conceived. Where does that come from?
I got this from 220 AD with Julius Sextus or Sextus Julius Africanus. So look into that.
And
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
I read it years ago on an article on the Tecton Forge. I don't remember if the article is still up, but I remember reading it. I thought it was very interesting, and I affirm the virgin birth.
All right.
Yeah, I find it interesting too, because I actually specialize in bioethics, and one of the arguments I have to contend with are arguments against arguments that the Bible is consistent with abortion and things like that. And I'm thinking, well, if there's this idea that a prophet dies on the day he was conceived, then clearly that indicates there's a continuity of identity there, that the thing that's conceived there is the prophet himself. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe that might be another way to go to show that that we're made in God's image from the very beginning of fertilization. I know that's widely off topic. It was just something that came to mind because, being that I specialize in it, it's kind of always in the back of my mind.
So, anybody else?
I think there's one other objection that shows up. I think there's one other objection that shows up on the internet all the time that we need to say something about. And I've already got my answer to it, but I'll throw it out there. And yes, it says that Renault immediately is one of the most ridiculous ones out there. But, if you read Jeremiah chapter 10, it condemns Christmas trees, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was the next one I was going to cover. Let's read that. It says, "Hear what the Lord says to you, people of Israel. This is what the Lord says. Do not learn the ways of the nations, or be terrified by signs in the heavens through the nations, though the nations are terrified by them. For the practices of the peoples are worthless. They cut a tree from the forest, and a craftsman shapes it with a chisel. They adorn it with silver and gold. They fasten it with the hammer and nails, so it will not totter. Like a scarecrow in a cucumber field, their idols cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot walk.
Yeah, right off the bat, and of course, as Greg Kokel says, never read a Bible verse. You need to read the whole verse in the surrounding passage. But right off the bat, I'm thinking, this couldn't possibly be talking about Christmas trees, because this was written hundreds, if not 1,000 years before Christ was even born. So obviously Christmas trees can't be in view here. It sounds to me, not having read this verse in a while, that it's probably dealing with idols made of wood, that it's condemning cutting down a tree to make an idol. I don't see how you can get a condemnation of Christmas trees from these these verses here.
Well,
And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have any craftsmen fashion my Christmas trees. That's
Right,
just
yeah.
me.
what one thing that I saw here that kind of bothered me was, why would they say a tree can't walk unless it was shaped like something else? Because obviously this is not talking about a tree. I mean, the base of a tree is just the base of a tree. I mean, there's no idea that it can walk, so it obviously is talking about shaping and fastening idols. So you got to read the context. You got to use some common sense. This is not the origin of Christmas trees. At least that's my answer.
Although, if he introduces himself as Treebeard, then you have an issue.
We might get stepped on. Dale?
Right.
Yeah, you guys have said everything. Yeah, it's clearly about talking about idol worship. It's not, it doesn't have in mind Christmas trees or something like that. I think you brought up a great point there, David Russell, about the walking thing. Yeah, that's a tip off right there. That it's obviously talking about worshiping idols and that sort of thing. So, yeah, nothing else to add to that.
Yep, and I don't know whoever uses a tree for a scarecrow. I think that a tree would attach itself to or a scarecrow or a crow would attach itself to a tree instead of a scarecrow. I mean, it's obviously looking like something. So I mean, it just takes some common sense,
Yeah, exactly. I agree fully. It's you read the full thing, the full text, you can clearly see it. So yeah, I don't understand where people see Christmas trees in that.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So we're we're on the topic of Christmas trees. Anybody else want to add to this? Caleb, I haven't heard from you in a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to dive in and say, this is probably something that developed out of Canaanite culture. As we see back in the book of Judges, we see reference to Asherah poles, which are clearly these idols that are set up around towns and communities. And, we see this kind of continue. We should probably look earlier historically and kind of followed up through for logical conclusions rather than taking a look at, we decorate trees now, so this must be what we need to exegete rather than eisegete the text. So, that's the only thing I would add on these Christmas trees in Jeremiah.
So is it okay to actually have a Christmas tree in your home? Yes.
Unless
Sure.
you're bowing down and worshiping
Yes.
it.
Right. Yeah, actually, I'm in the process of moving right now. Yeah, I'm actually in the process of moving right now. For the past podcast, I've actually had a small little Christmas tree on display behind me, but I've already moved out the bookcase that I was resting the Christmas tree on, and I just don't have anything better to put it on at the moment. So it's here in my room, but it's not on screen. So might have been appropriate for this to say.
Right on. Another thing to note to even help equip the audience even further is the fact that everybody has a holiday tradition, and every culture celebrates holidays. Every human has a tradition in that regard, And there are common ones. There are common things like wreaths, giving gifts, drinking the similar drinks. So correlation doesn't imply causation. And I think that needs to be said, because many people do make that mistake. Anybody else on that?
No, I think you're on point there.
Yeah, I think you said what needs to be said.
Well, and I think that, I mean, so some of these just basic reasoning kind of things, it's almost scary, the irrational conclusions people make. I saw a video clip where a guy was saying that whenever on Christmas morning, whenever you kneel down to get a present out from under your tree, you're bowing before the tree in worship. It's like,
Wow.
no, I'm getting a present out from under the tree. And it's just weird, these leaps that people make. So I don't know. Besides the history of the Christmas tree goes to much more than, presents and Bible verses about, cutting things down.
And who doesn't give gifts on holidays? I mean, people usually do that. That's a common thread, unless you're a presuppositionalist like David Pullman. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, depending on your custom too. I mean, you give gifts for all kinds of occasions. Housewarming gift if someone just moved in. Giving gifts is just an expression of appreciation or an expression of welcome. It's nothing.
So
nothing.
I hear you.
Gifts are a great way of expressing appreciation for all those people in your life that means so much to you. Like just apologist, online and things like that. I mean, that's a great gifts are such a great way to show appreciation to those people, I think. And I have a birth.
Hey, you're getting in deeper waters there, Nick. But yeah, so again, this comes down to due diligence, right? So these people aren't looking into the history. Okay, there is a history to the Christmas tree. Christians are to me one of the best in keeping their history intact. I even looked into pagan ideas about this and what they had to say about it. And one thing, this guy he calls himself Spring Wolf, but he's actually a PhD in pagan history, in ancient history and pagan history, or whatever that his degree field is. I don't think I wrote the exact degree he had, but he was a historian, and he said, there's no primary document that the Christmas tree is pagan. None. He said, matter of fact, he says you can't find anything out about it like it being pagan until you get to the 19th to 20th centuries. He said likely people in the North pagans and so forth, would have used an evergreen tree to keep out the cold. They wouldn't have cut it down and put it in their house. So that was a very interesting point that he brought up. And then I looked into the Britannica, which also records this. It says the modern Christmas tree, though originated in Western Germany, the main prop of a popular medieval play about Adam and Eve was a paradise tree, a fir tree hung with apples that represented the Garden of Eden. The Germans set up a paradise tree in their homes on December 24th, the religious feast day of Adam and Eve. They hung wafers on it, symbolizing the Eucharist host, the Christian sign of redemption. In a later tradition, the wafers were replaced by cookies of various shapes. Candles, symbolic of Christ as the light of the world, were often added. In the same room was the Christmas pyramid, a triangular construction of wood that had shelves to hold Christmas figurines and was decorated with evergreens, candles, and a star. By the 16th century, the Christmas pyramid and the paradise tree had merged to become the Christmas tree. It simply takes picking up an encyclopedia, folks. Don't believe every meme you read.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth mentioning that that people need to be careful not to make a guilt by association fallacy. If Christmas, if these trees do feature in pagan rituals, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be immoral for Christians to have a similar ritual regarding trees. I mean, the New Testament even made it permissible, as long as your conscience allows it, to eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols. So even if pagan cultures use trees in their celebrations, we're not using it for the purpose of idolatry. We're using it as decoration and to enhance our own celebrations. So it would be a guilt by association fallacy to say that just because the pagans use trees in their celebrations, we are then forbidden from using it in ours because it gives off too much of a pagan appearance, or whatever the reasoning might be.
Right on. And again, like you said, and that kind of backs off of, correlation doesn't imply causation, right? So
Yeah.
I agree totally. Dale, you
Yeah,
got anything on this?
Yeah. Again, I agree with everything you guys are saying. So in terms of the so what point, pretend it was borrowed from pagans or something. Who cares? We're using it in a different context. We're not using it to worship or that sort of thing. One quick correction for you, Russell. I did remember reading somewhere that in the Middle Ages, some Germans and Scandinavians did put evergreen trees inside their homes or something like that, but it wasn't a Christmas tree or anything. I don't know what it was for. But
Yeah, you won't find any primary sources on that. Yeah, at all. I mean, we don't even know what they celebrated back then. All we got is the Pros Edda there, and they give a weird description of their celebrations in Scandinavia during Yuletide.
Gotcha.
So, I can read it to you, but hold on. Anybody else on the Christmas tree before I move on?
Yeah,
I was going to say, so we're not going with the story about Saint Boniface cutting down Thor's oak. Is that not? That's not what we're going with. Have you heard that legend?
No, I haven't heard that one.
That apparently Saint Boniface comes into whatever town, and there's this mighty oak that was Thor's oak, and he figures, well, if I'm going to reach these pagans, I got to show my God's greater than theirs. And so he goes and cuts down the oak. And whenever Thor doesn't strike him dead, the people see that his God is greater. And then a fir tree grows up where the oak had been. And so that's why we have Christmas trees.
Yeah, so
I'm thinking that's probably not accurate, but it is a fun one.
Kind of like the one where Saint Nicholas punches Arius in the face, right?
Yeah. I was about to say it's no Saint Nick punching Arius, but it's a good story.
Yeah, it's hard with some of these things unless you go back to a very early source, because even the Jehovah's Witnesses use the Encyclopedia Britannica to argue against Christmas trees, because it mentions a Yule tree being placed at the entrance to people's homes. So we just don't know with some of these things where the origin came from, and so we have to use some judgment. But as Christians, we're even given the freedom to eat meat that's been sacrificed to other gods if it's in the right context and it's something that's not going to cause a brother to stumble. So doesn't mean we should accept other worship practices, but we certainly have the freedom, especially for things like this where we just don't know where the tradition came from.
Yeah, there's a lot you can actually learn when it comes to certain traditions. They got a couple big volumes of books on like European folklore and stuff you can actually get, and that's what brings me to the whole Yuletide celebration, which is pretty wild because I have Viking heritage myself, so it kind of like struck a chord with me when I saw Grimfrost, which is a company that makes Viking gear and Thor's hammers and necklaces and sell all that stuff, and they're like, well, the Christians kind of stole all this from us. We had this guy, we had that guy, we had this holiday, we had that holiday. But again, they don't ever cite you primary sources. They cite you nothing that actually can prove this. They show you a couple of pictures that come way later. And people don't know that, like, a lot of this stuff comes after, Europe was like Christianized, way after. A lot of these legends that pop up that you hear and these folklores come way after it's Christianized. the only thing that we got as a primary source for how pagans celebrated Yule is we the 21st of December to the January 6th is kind of how long they celebrated. Sometimes they'd extend it into February, but according to the Norse Pros Edda, which was written in 840 CE, it describes their Yule sacrifices their Yule. There's a sacrifice celebration as this. It says it was ancient custom that when sacrifice was to be made, all farmers were to come to the heathen temple and bring along with them the food they needed while the feast lasted. At this feast, all were to take part of the drinking of ale. Also, all kinds of livestock were killed in connection with it, horses also, and all the blood from them was called hulat, sacrificial blood, and hulat boli, the vessel holding the blood, and the hulat tenir, the sacrificial twigs, aspergillus. These were fashioned like sprinklers, and with them were to be smeared all over with blood, with blood the pedestals, exactly how it's worded, of the idols, and also the walls of the temple within and without. And likewise the men present were to be sprinkled with blood. So that's pretty much what we got for Yule.
Yeah, I haven't.
Doesn't really sound like any Christmas celebration I've ever been to.
Exactly.
But I'm Baptist. We do things kind of weird.
Right.
We're just kind of toned down and don't get too excited.
Yeah, and then you got things like the Yule log, which actually only shows up in a Robert Herrick poem in the 17th century, and it was actually England never celebrated Yule, so paganism was long dead after that. So it could have been just a Christmas log at that point. So calling it a Yule log is just something we've done later on.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Yule just really mean winter? Basically, it just reference to the season, not specifically a religious thing.
It's usually what's funny is it's an actually archaic term, meaning Christmas. So again, we run into this idea of a already Christianized Europe, and the quote I just read you from the Pros Edda was actually written by a Christian monk who was observing the different cultures. So all the memes we have is just a people not doing their due diligence in this idea. And so I mean, do you guys got anything else on these ideas of pagan holidays and stuff like this? Anything else that you want to add?
I just want to say that I affirm the virgin birth.
All right.
Unlike Paulman, do you affirm the virgin birth? I want to hear
it.
Only on Tuesdays.
Do you mind if I just, out of curiosity, if it's not a thing, like this, I affirm the virgin birth, like where did that come from or start from? Like, was there a time you were denying it or you weren't sure about it or something?
Okay, here's the story. I was with a friend in the Unbelievers chat group where it seems everything gets started. And we had a skeptic who was saying, well, if Paul believed in the virgin birth, don't you think he would have mentioned it? And we were trying to explain, this is a high context society, it's background knowledge, but letters are occasional, but not meant to be biographies. And then we said, here's a demonstration of being background knowledge. We go to evangelical churches, and our pastors believe in the virgin birth, and they don't come right out and state it every single sermon that they give. That'd be ridiculous. And to show a point, we started saying that we affirm the virgin birth in every single post. And with me, of a good joke, I can't stop it. So I took it out there, and now it's caught on. I've even got a t-shirt and bumper sticker now that say I affirm the virgin birth, which I do affirm.
Nice. All right, cool. Yeah, thank you for letting me know. I was just curious about where that came from. So
Oh, and Nick, Dale is a protege of your friend Gary Habermas.
Yes, and
Yep,
I don't
yeah.
remember. I don't remember if he's the one who mentioned tectonics earlier, but JP Holding, who runs that, he's my ministry partner also. So.
Yeah, I love JP Holding. His ministry is great with Tecton. I use him a lot. So believe it or not, I've also got Michael Kona coming on in the new year to discuss the evidence for the resurrection. So yeah.
Yeah, Nick knows Mike too,
Did
right?
you say you're meeting with?
With Mike Lacon.
Mike Lacon, isn't he a heretic?
I think so. I'll put up with them for the one day. So he's not like David Paulman. So I understand, right?
I got James White on my side, so I'm untouchable, boys.
I've heard that Mike's son-in-law is also really annoying. So, has anybody else heard that?
Yeah, we've heard it.
Yep.
Yeah, we heard it. We heard it in the show, I think.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, guys, let's move on to one last area that I have to cover. That I would like to cover for audiences wide, far and wide.
Just real quick. If after we do this question, I have one that I'd like to bring up and
absolutely actually bring it up first, man. I mean, I've been hogging a lot of the host time.
It's not an apologetic discussion, so I figured we could do your question, then we could do this. Just it's more of a like get to know you kind of question.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, guys. So
you're not making us play icebreakers, are you?
No, it's not a love song worship song.
Are we gonna hold hands and sing Fieldings now?
No, Kumbaya.
Oh,
right on.
Okay, but don't
okay, guys. So
do the harmony because he's horrible at that.
But I didn't know he could actually play the guitar. You know, you should check that out on Facebook.
So a fellow musician.
Yeah. At least in that video, he was.
Oh, okay.
So let's talk Saint Nick. So we mentioned him punching Arius earlier. Anybody got anything they want to say on Nicholas and Myra?
I'm glad
I
you
will
clarified that because I was wondering, you talk about Saint Nick while I'm here.
Yeah, I will say that I've kind of changed my position on the teaching of Santa Claus to your kids. I used to be, we should not teach Santa to our kids because parents are lying to their kids, and it might make things more difficult if you try to teach your kids about God after you've already revealed that you've lied to them about Santa. But after reading an essay by G.K. Chesterton on why he still believes in Santa Claus, kind of changed my way of thinking on that, and studying, the less, less. I don't want to say academic because this is academic too, but like the less, I guess the less intellectual apologetic pursuits and the more like artistic ones, like philosophy of art and music and things like that. I've come to realize that there's an apologetic there regarding like storytelling and things like that. That there's a whole apologetic you can build based around art and music and storytelling, that kind of thing. And so I started to realize that after reading this essay by Chesterton, that teaching Santa to your kids and doing the whole Santa Claus thing with them, it's not necessarily, it shouldn't become a stumbling block for teaching your kids about God later on, because what it's actually doing is it's helping to foster their imagination. Because when we hear about Saint Nick and we kind of overemphasize Nicholas's properties because he's a human being, but we do believe in a real being which encompasses what we think of as Saint Nick, and that of course being God. And so even as adults, Chesterton was quite open about still believing in Saint Nick, but the the person behind Saint Nick changed as he got older and started to know more about the world. And I thought that was kind of a unique way of looking at things, and so it kind of changed my position on the teaching of Saint Nick to your kids.
Yeah, just to dive in for a minute, it's been probably a year or two since I dove into the history on it. But St. Nicholas was a really interesting individual, even though we don't have a lot of really early sources on him. But we know he was bishop of a port town, so it was a big fishing town. So it's where a lot of the Catholic traditions on him being a patron saint of fish or fishermen, as well as children, of course, which carries over some into the Santa Claus legends. But we know he was bishop in this town. We know he did a good bit of time in prison for being a bishop before Christianity was legal. We know that he was out at the Council of Nicaea because of the records. Those are what we have from the earliest records. After that, a few hundred years later, we start to see some of these more legendary tales move in. That he had this probably, I can't remember when this was based, but I know that he had inherited a large sum of money from his parents, apparently. And he was very generous and giving with this. And, we get a lot of the legendary stories from there. Some of them are really interesting, that he put money in these stockings, if you will, that were hung out, or he tossed things in the windows. A guy was going to have to sell his daughter into prostitution, and he pays the whole bride price for her and saved her life. Then you get even more outlandish ones about children being pickled by evil people, and Saint Nick saving them and putting them back together. So, it gets kind of crazy as legend moves on. But again, none of this really relates, aside from a few correlations, to modern day Santa Claus.
Yeah. Anybody else on Santa? All right, well, I'll start. The Santa Claus that you were mentioning there, Caleb, it's really interesting because when I was doing my research on him, he actually was also a patron saint to sailors, prisoners, bakers, pawnbrokers, shopkeepers, and wolves, along with what you said. So, but after the Reformation, his popularity was still remained with the Dutch. And so the Dutch, they came over here and they had actually celebrated a feast day on December 6th. That was the day he died. That tradition held that he died. So they gave a feast that day, and they brought that over to America. And that's where Santa Claus really changed. Back before the American Revolution in 1773, Dutch immigrants celebrated the Feast of St. Nicholas in December. This was long held that was the day that he died. In 1804, John Pintard of the New York Historical Society was the first person that we can trace back that distributed actual wooden cutlets of St. Nick. The appearance strayed a lot from the Catholic look and featured him as more of a Dutchman. So this is where you get the look from. It's not a pagan look. It's not this Joel Lapuki, this idea that Odin is somehow the look for Saint Nick. It comes from the idea that he was a Dutchman, and as time goes on, Santa Claus evolves. And there's more pictures that come of him. He evolves into this, fat Dutchman, this traveler. He starts wearing redder clothes as we go, not fully red and blue. In the Civil War, one of the first pictures ever painted, and I got some of these pictures here, is Santa Claus giving out gifts to soldiers, right? But there's one other one that the night before Christmas, which was originally called, it was a poem originally called "A Visit from Saint Nick." These are where the legend really developed and why in America we celebrate Santa Claus as we do, and it spread worldwide. So that's what I got on that. 1950s came around, and so Coca-Cola made him into the red suited man that we have today.
I would say when I was listening to this and I heard you say Santa Claus evolves, me got my head a picture of the screen saying, "What? Santa Claus is evolving," and then the Pokemon evolution music playing.
Right on. Well, guys, anybody else on these legends and Santa Claus here? Dale, you got anything, bud?
I guess the only thing to add, so obviously I agree with you in terms of them evolving and that sort of thing. I think brown and green coats as well back in the 1800s, that sort of thing. The interesting thing I think was from Clinton, who was saying he has a way to teach his kids, because I wanted to try anything to be able to preserve that or whatever without that entailing there was a lie. I even resorted to modal logic, which is ridiculous. Like, he exists in a possible world.
Right. I am all for that tactic, using logic to justify your views.
Awesome. But I just wanted to say I appreciated your take about looking at it from a philosophy of art standpoint. There might be something there.
Yeah, like I said, G.K. Chesterton was the one who kind of changed my thinking on this. I'm not 100%. I don't have any kids of my own. I do have nieces, and they did the whole Santa Claus thing. My original thought was, I'll teach them about Santa, and I'll say that other kids, do this Santa Claus thing, so don't ruin that for them, even though we're not teaching it to you. But yeah, after reading that essay by Chesterton, it really kind of changed my thinking on that. So look, I don't remember what the essay was called, but I'd recommend maybe looking that up, seeing if Chesterton has some insights for you that you might be able to take from.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Right on. Well, guys, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover on this podcast. I know, Clinton, you said you had something else you wanted to talk about, so
yeah,
go for it, my friend.
Okay, not really talk about. Just I was just kind of curious. I thought I'd pose the question of what are all of yours favorite Christmas songs? Either it can be traditional or it can be more modern, whatever furnishes your house.
Oh, Holy Night.
I happen to have three at least that I prefer, and I'm very traditional. I go for classics: 12 Pains of Christmas, The Night Santa went Crazy, and Christmas at Ground Zero.
All right, I'm familiar with two of those.
Yeah, for me, it's Oh Holy Night, so I'm with David Russell, and also Carol of the Bells.
Carol of the Bells is good, but Hark the Herald Angels Sing is better.
Touche, Mr. Ballman.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Mr. Paulman on this as well, because I definitely prefer that one, and Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and particularly Bad Religion's version is actually really, really good.
Ideally, Bad Religion has the best version of a religious Christmas song.
That's the irony of it.
Right on.
And Mark, I don't think we've heard you yet. Is Mark frozen?
Mark is frozen.
Looks like he's frozen.
Oh,
so then
No
we're just
complaints.
we're gonna assign one to him. we're gonna assign You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch.
I was thinking maybe Santa Baby.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, he moved. Let's see if he...
That'd work.
He said he was having audio issues earlier.
Yeah. Come on, Mark, we're all rooting for you.
Yeah, we'll stick with giving him the Grinch.
All right. Yeah, as for me, I agree with David Russell. Oh Holy Night is probably my favorite Christmas hymn. What Child Is This coming in a fairly close second.
Mary Did You Know is pretty good too. I do like that as a
Oh, yeah.
modern song. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not
Have
too
you
crazy about modern Christmas
heard
songs.
Vader?
I'm
Did you
not.
know?
What's that?
Have you ever heard Vader? Did you know?
No, I haven't heard that.
No, I haven't heard that one.
I've heard about 20 different versions of Mary Did You Know though. Yeah, I'm not one of those that only likes the traditional hymns. Because I'm a contemporary worship leader myself. But when it comes to Christmas music, there are some modern songs I like, but for the most part, traditional ones are the ones that I usually gravitate to. But I would say probably my favorite modern Christmas song, I would say probably "Breath of Heaven" by Amy Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Well, that's pretty much all I got, guys. I mean, is there anything else that anybody else wants to add?
I have
want to
one
add
question.
a different
Oh,
version
sorry.
birth.
Go.
Dale, go ahead.
So I didn't actually get to ask this when we were doing the virgin birth section, like the messianic prophecy aspect, but you guys were mentioning, so Betula means virgin and that sort of thing. And Parthenos in the Septuagint always means virgin. But I remember reading that it doesn't always, from Michael Brown, so he's a Christian and that sort of thing. He was saying that there is actually times where even those words aren't clear virgin. So it's, if you get an objection, why did Isaiah 7:14 use Elma instead of Betula? If they wanted to say virgin, they would have used that word. Well, actually, no, it wasn't clear either way. So it was right to use the word Elma. It wasn't necessarily a mistake on their part. So I just wanted to add that aspect. So
Right on.
I have a general rule where I don't publicly disagree with Dr. Michael Brown, and so that's just if he said that, then so be it.
Paul, what do you got, man? You got anything?
Well, I think this is our last podcast for the year, right?
This is PORA's last podcast of the year. We are taking a break, sir.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we got more movie reviews planned for next year, right? More bad Christian apologetics films.
Of course.
Hey, fill us in on what these movie reviews are.
Well, we just started. We did A Matter of Faith last week. I'll let David tell you a little bit about it.
Oh goodness, horrible film. It's how not to be a young Earth creationist. I mean, yeah, it's just basically the biggest problem with the film is that it didn't understand the theory of evolution, but wanted to criticize it. And I'm a skeptic of the theory of evolution, but not for the reasons that this film presented. It was bad.
Yeah. Have any of you heard of a band called Apologetics? And they have like a capital X instead of a CS at the end. Yeah, they're one of my favorite bands, and for the most part, they're good on apologetics. But when they try to tackle evolution through one of their songs, it's always kind of embarrassing. So,
hey man, Bone Diggers is a classic.
Yeah. Bone Digger. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. But they did a parody of one of my all-time favorite classic rock songs, "Money for Nothing" by Dire Straits, and turned it into "Monkeys for Uncles."
Oh my God.
And I love Dire Straits. I love Money for Nothing, but it's like I can't listen to their version of it without cringing. So.
Yeah, what's funny is like we used to, I structured PRA. Me and my original co-host, we structured PRA as a debate show, and we were trying to really structure it kind of like Unbelievable, and we actually got a hold of Justin Brierly and had him come on and actually give us some pointers. But when we got David on, David took over for Titus, and I was like, dude, we need to do more shows, and let's mix it up a bit. Let's get some critiques in there. And then David was like, "Hey, let's do some movie reviews and some other type of critiques and videos and stuff." So that's where we started PRA Raw. So that's that's just us getting together and having fun. And you guys are welcome to come on anytime and critique it with us.
Oh yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah,
that sounds like fun. We did a few movie reviews this past year too.
Oh, that's true. We did. Yeah, we did more mainstream movies though, not really bad faith-based films.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. David has this wonderful thing where he was able just to grab clips from his from this movie and send them to me, and we just put them up and did it. So
Maybe
yeah.
next Christmas we should review Die Hard together.
Yeah.
All things Christmas Part 2, Die Hard. the Die Hard movie. Right on.
Okay, so I've just got to get this out there. Being set during Christmas is a necessary condition, not a sufficient condition of being a Christmas film. Sorry, Die Hard fans.
All right, guys. Well, Caleb, will you you want to close us out, bro?
Sure. Yeah. We always wrap up by giving everybody a chance to say where to find them for content. So we will just start with you and work our way around kind of clockwise here.
Yeah, so you can find me personally on Facebook at the Virginia Apologetics Union. Also that on WordPress. You could also find me on PORA, Proselytize or Apostatize, and Skeptics and Seekers.
All right. You can find me on the Mentionables channel, which maybe you're watching this on there now. Go ahead, subscribe, hit notification, and also check out Question Christianity, another discussion-based show where we get into some different topics than we do here on in Mentionables.
You can find me on Facebook and MeWe. You just search for my name. You can find me on Twitter at Clinton_Wilcox. You can find me on Parler at Pro-Life Philosophy, all one word. And you can also find my podcast, Pro-Life Thinking, on iTunes and blogtalkradio.com/pro-life-thinking. And I have also recently started up a YouTube channel for Pro-Life Thinking, which you can find on YouTube, oddly enough. But the purpose of the podcast is to talk about bioethics and to train you in how to make the pro-life case effectively and persuasively. And if you want to get the full benefit of the podcast / YouTube broadcast, it really behooves you to listen to the podcast and watch our channel on YouTube, because we have videos and podcasts that are unique to both. So if you want to get the most out of pro-life thinking, then you'll want to pay attention to both the audio and the video portions.
You can find me at Facebook. Hey Pastor is my Facebook page, website heypastor.org. On Twitter, Hey Pastor, QNA, the letter N, because that's how Twitter is. And yeah, that's probably the quickest and easiest, or whatever the Mentionables, I'm able to join in with.
Besides being on Proselytize or Apostatize as the co-host with David Russell, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Faith Because of Reason.
Awesome. Yep, and I'm the host of Real Seekers podcast. And you can find me, I don't have Facebook or anything like that, but I'm at realseekerministries.wordpress.com. And yeah, check out what I've got there.
And you can find everything with me at deeperwatersapologetics.com, including statements about the virgin birth, which I do affirm.
All right. Well, I don't know about you guys. I've certainly enjoyed it. It's been a good time. We'll have to do stuff like this more often.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
But here's
Merry Christmas to you guys.
David
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you.
What? Yeah, I just wanted to say it was great speaking to you guys. I learned a lot listening to you. So yeah, thanks for having me on. It was great fun.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I think that's about all, folks.